My name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Mike, Marianne, and Meara McNally. It's August 25th, 2025. We're at Fairsing Vineyards in Yamhill. Thank you, the three of you, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
First question, anyone can take this and start with it, is why wine?
Well, I would say it's more why a vineyard. We made a decision to come out here and look around in Oregon. At the time, we were in Dallas, Texas. And we were just searching for a new project. Mike loves a project. I love to help. And we thought that a vineyard would be what we wanted to do. So in the early 2000s, 2004 and 5, we made trips out here and looked at different properties. This was actually the first property that we looked at. But we really thought it was too big a project for us and that we wanted something that was already planted, had a home on site, would just be walk in and just be comfortable with it. But it didn't go that way. You can pick it up.
But to back up a little bit, you had studied wine in Dallas and had family that lived here. So this is definitely Marianne's passion. She has the wine in her heart and an excellent palate for wine, an excellent nose for wine. And why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I attended a program in Sherman, Texas, which is just north of Dallas, Texas, at the Grayson Community College, the T.V. Munson Viticulture and Enology Center. And it was a really cool program because it was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and you could stay on campus if you wanted to. And it was once a month. So believe it or not, there's a lot of wine being made in Texas. And there were people from all over the state. It was really, really a nice program. I enjoyed it so much. And I had kind of thought that it was something I might want to do, but after taking that program, I was just hook, line, and sinker caught.
We probably need to even back up a step further than that. Marianne would come out to Oregon quite often because she had cousins in Portland. Mm-hmm. And she would leave me back in Texas watching Meara and her brothers. And she came home one day and said, "Oh, we were out in the vineyards tasting wine. I think you were at Erath Knutson at the time." And she said, "It was just beautiful. And you need to do it someday." And I said, "Well, yeah, if you'd take me along." And that's what I think encouraged you or inspired you to go join the T.V. Munson Wine Studies program.
I always heard about what a beautiful place Oregon was from my mom. And I remember we came out so her aunt, my great aunt, lived here. And I remember coming out when I was about 14.
Yes.
We came out and visited, and I was just blown away by how green it is here. Growing up in the plains in Texas, it was just like, wow, I didn't realize you could have a place this beautiful that you could come and live. And she always talked about how it was so a place she wanted to get to eventually. So.
Well, and our heritage is agriculture.
Oh, yes, truly.
We both have grandparents that had farms. Mm-hmm. I remember going out and visiting your grandparents on the farm, going up and visiting my uncle and aunt, on the farms. And so, our Irish roots, originated with Irish immigrants, 1840s to 1860s, moving up here and pioneering and starting their farms. And one of the pillars of our brand is heritage. And we want to honor the heritage of the people that took care of this land for many years, the Tuality Band of the Kalipuya. But then we also see the heritage from our Irish roots, and the agricultural roots. And I think to some extent that draws us to be out here in the country and green spaces and the rolling green hills like Ireland.
Did we mention all three of us are native Nebraskans? So that's where it all originated, in Nebraska.
Well, let's talk a little bit about life before wine then. Mike, let's start with you. Tell us about being born and raised in Nebraska and your kind of before wine life.
Yep. Omaha, Nebraska, was the place where I originated. Actually, Marianne and I both, we met at Creighton University. In Omaha, I graduated from school, applied mathematics, business, and started into a corporate career, a company called Internorth at the time. Before long, we transferred to Houston, Texas, in the natural gas business. Worked and brought Marianne along, much to the chagrin of your mother.
Right.
She said, "You're going to take my two grandchildren," Kevin wasn't born yet, down to Houston, Texas. And I said, "Well, it's a great opportunity, Lucy." And so we went to Houston, Texas for 11 years. I actually moved into a division that was developing international power plants and power and pipelines down in South America. And it was a real burden on Marianne and the family because I would get on a plane on Sunday evenings, fly to the Southern Cone, and then get home on Saturday mornings. And
he used to say, when I walk in the door, both the dog and Marianne growl at me.
So just for family security, that means to be able to stay married. I got a job offer up in Dallas, Texas, with a big electric utility up there, and went up to Dallas. Family moved up there in the 95 time frame, working for this big electric utility. I was president of their transmission division for a number of years, and then became the chief financial officer. At the time frame of around 2004, a new chief executive officer came in, and as typically happens, they wanted their own CFO. And so I was out looking for other jobs, and Marianne sat down with me at dinner one time and said, "Now look, I went with you to Houston, Texas, and I went with you to Dallas, Texas. I think we should do something I want to do." And I said, "What do you want to do?" And she said, "I want to go out to Oregon and grow grapes." And I said, "I've never been to Oregon. You've never let me go with you." So that's a little bit of my history.
Doesn't it rain a lot? So I prepared a spreadsheet of rain, and it was less than Houston, Texas, or about the same as Houston. So
yeah, but the rain in Houston, Texas all shows up in 5 days. It comes out here in 5 months.
That's true.
So that's a little bit of my
But
background.
let's go back. We've learned to love the rain. We really.
Oh, well, yeah, I love the
like right
climate out here.
now, I had a dream last night that it was raining. Thought I could hear it. I mean, I'm really craving it. Yeah.
Yeah, about that time.
Yeah.
About that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Marianne, tell me a little bit about your background before.
Oh, my background's in special ed. I'm a speech and language pathologist, and always worked, well, not always. I worked in hospitals when I started out, and then moved to public schools because it was a better timing with children. So.
Well, what prompted you down that path?
Oh, always loved kids. Always loved helping people. That was really what it was.
You were a huge volunteer organizer.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
as the
Marianne
kids,
made
yeah.
millions of dollars for the schools, running auctions and things like that.
And Marianne, let's talk about you a little bit before wine.
So I was finishing up college when they started this endeavor. So I was a young adult when they purchased this property and just finished college. And I went to school on the East Coast. I went to Skidmore College in upstate New York. And as I was graduating and thinking about where I wanted to be next, I didn't really feel a pull to any of the big cities on the East Coast. And my parents already had plans to leave Texas, and I didn't feel a pull to go back to Texas. So I thought, I hear Oregon's really cool. Portland's up and coming. Let's go there. So moved out here to Portland. I did some work in nonprofits for my first couple of years here, then went back to grad school at PSU, got a master's in geography, and then spent about a decade working in GIS, Geographic Information Systems. Worked for a couple different companies, kind of doing tech stuff with geographic information systems. And then in 2021, decided to come and help these guys.
We're so appreciative.
Yeah, we had a lot going on at that time. When we first started, it was just the vineyard. And in the 2012 timeframe, 2011 timeframe, you might talk about how Meara was getting married and you were looking for wine and you ran into Howard Mosaico.
We became friends with Howard Mosaico and loved his brand with and daughter and
Afy
Afy wines. and then clasping hands. And we thought, oh, that'd be so great to serve at Meara's wedding. So, chatted with him, became friends with him, and we had the opportunity. We had some grapes, and we thought, why don't we give it a try? Why don't we just see what it tastes like? And Howard at that time said, sure, bring it over, let's do it. And I don't even remember how many cases we made.
About 150 cases of
Yeah.
the 2011.
We also made the 10, remember?
Oh, that's right, we did
The
do some
10 was-
2010.
The
Yeah.
10, the 11 was really good. And worked with Howard through 12. And then we wanted to bring on the Chardonnay. And we asked him if he would make Chardonnay for us. And he said, I'm going to be brutally honest. I don't have any experience with Chardonnay. It's going to take me 3 to 4 years to get up to speed on it. I think you should look around. So we looked around and found someone else to start us off with the Chardonnay program.
Because before that, they'd been just selling grapes. So it was
Right,
just the
right.
vineyard and selling grapes to other winemakers. And there wasn't really an intention to make wine.
No.
And then it kind of snowballed with Howard Mosaico, and
Howard
then,
got us going.
yep.
Well, and we should back up a little bit, in the growing the vineyards, we have so many people to thank, in that whole process. I mean, Matt Peel and his team helped us prepare the land. At that time, we were using Bob Bailey with Northwest Vineyard Services, and Bob Bailey and his team started us out. And
And it just did a beautiful design here. The blocks he laid out are just gorgeous. And what he told me, and I could hardly believe, was that he would be able to hide our ugly equipment shed where, all the tractors and implements are. And he did. I mean, you don't see it from here. So, yeah, Bob had a great eye for design.
we eventually moved over to Results Partners with Daniel Fay, Lee Bartholomew, Luke Pedati, and they have done a wonderful job for us for many years. We moved over there when we wanted to be more sustainable, start working on our live certification and that, started working with Chris Serra, in getting live certified. Last year, didn't we, what was the award we just got?
We got the Live Award for Excellence in Sustainability
In 2025,
this year.
this year.
And so we were growing great grapes when Marianne finally said, we need to make a little bit of wine, and the story she doesn't like me to tell is that early on, I actually hired an architect to design a winery up on this site, and Larry Farrar. And Larry just put a conceptual concept together, and so I sat down with our board of directors, that was Marianne and I, and I showed her this conceptual design, and she looked at me and said, what in the heck are you doing? She said, we don't even know how to grow grapes. What makes you think we know anything about making wine? And so I quickly put that idea together, put it away, and we just focused on growing the grapes until you ran into Howard and said, oh, I'm going to make a little bit of Pinot
Well,
Noir.
and family was asking then, family and friends. Oh, we want to taste it. We want to see what it's like. So.
And then you ended up getting, actually what Marianne did was she went out, and I won't mention names, but she went out to 4 different winemakers who she loves their wines. And she sat down with each one of them and talked to them about making some wine because she wanted to make both the Pinot and the Chardonnay. Well, you need to talk about Ellen.
Well, yeah, we keep going forward and backing up. But
Every interview is that way.
Is it really?
Totally
Okay.
fine.
So we're going to
Totally
back up a little bit more. We had been at a conference, probably the Oregon Wine Industry Symposium, and at that time it was in Eugene, so very far back. Let me give another shout out. I'm going to back up even further than that. It was our first symposium that we had attended, and we were standing in line with lunch, and I believe it was
Lee Bartholomew?
and wasn't Daniel there too, Daniel Fay?
He was at the conference.
And we were in line waiting and talking to them, and right in front of us was Howard Mosaico. We did not know him. And Howard turned, and Lee knew him and made the introduction, and he said, do you guys have Vadensville to sell? Right? Was it Vadensville?
He wanted
Yeah.
Vadensville.
That was all he wanted, and we said, we sure do. So that was our first sale. We made it there. So that was pretty cool. So now I've lost my train. Where was I?
So then Ellen Britton.
Oh, yes. So we were at the conference, and we had listened to Ellen on marketing. And we had brought my sister on, Kate Spielman. She is our marketing and guru and social media and public relations and everything. And Ellen had spoken, and we thought, gosh, that woman is so smart. We need to check in with her. So we made an appointment with her, and she helped us work through some website things and gave us lots of great advice, more than I could ever absorb. And at the time, we worked with her for a few times. And at one point she said, well, have you decided who you're going to make wine with, or how are you going to bring these two, your Pinot SKU and your Chardonnay SKU together? She said, I think you should maybe talk to Robert. And that started it right there.
And you did work with 4 different folks, and then we picked Robert.
Yeah, we did.
You know, Robert is a wonderful winemaker. You know, he's
Gorgeous.
UC Davis, you know, Farniente, Stag's Leap Winery for many years. He and Ellen actually came up here about the time
same
we
time.
did, 2005, and they were making their wine over at the Carlton Winemaker Studio. As a matter of fact, Ellen was managing the Carlton Winemaker Studio at the time, and they had looked at this property at the time that we were thinking about buying it, and Robert likes to tell me, he says, you know, it's a wonderful place to grow grapes. It's one of the, you know, best geologies, best soils in the valley, but only a fool would put a vineyard up there. And I said, what? And he said, just the labor intensity of your hills and your draws, you know, up there, it's just going to be expensive to develop and expensive to farm. But he said, but I'm sure glad you did it, because I love making, you know, wines from your vineyard up there. But yeah, Ellen Britton, Robert Britton were a key part of the story. But, you know, I always like to talk about that 2011 that Howard made too, because, you know, we work through getting the grapes grown, made. We watched him go through the process of making, you know, the wine, and then we tasted it. And I said, this is just okay. You know, this is supposed to be a wonderful Pinot. And we were talking to Adam Campbell, because Adam Campbell was buying fruit from us now at that time. And Adam said, look, folks, put that 2011 away. It's going to be just wonderful in a couple years. But your 2012 was a warm year. 2011 was a cool year. He said, the 2012s that you have in barrel right now is where you should launch your brand. You know, and so we did. The first wines that we tried to sell were the 2012s. And then a couple years later, we pulled those 2011s out, and they had a peppery. Now we had a full palate. I don't know what happened to the wines that had aged. But once we released those 2011s, man, they just flew out the...
They did fly out the door.
Out the tent.
Out the tent, yeah, because at that point we had a tent.
Over on
sold wine over on the
west side of the property, we have a campground where we've had campouts with the family and friends. And Marianne and I would set up a tent over there and contact the wine touring companies, and they would come up. We'd be there on Saturdays and Sundays, you know, and they'd bring the tours out. We'd sell some of the 2012s, and then when we released the 2011s, we'd start doing the 2011s. And so that's, and it was fun, you know. But then one day you came to me and said, we need to make a tasting room if we're going to do this. You know, and I said,
Tent doesn't cut it.
gosh.
Tent didn't cut it, not in the rain, that's for sure.
We had just finished the house. We built a house on the vineyard here and enjoyed that process. But in our lives, we've built a number of homes, you know, and they're always a stressful event. They always come in over budget. And it's always our fault, you know. But so we just finished the home, and Marianne said, I want to build, you know, a tasting room. And I said, oh gosh, okay, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do a prefab. You know, there's these companies that do prefabricated buildings, and you can re-outfit what the inside's going to be. And they come and they just drop it, and, you know, they're pretty much on budget, on time, and all that type of stuff. So we happened to be at dinner with our architect for the house, Nathan Good Architects. He and his wife, April. And Nathan is a wonderful green architect. He's built a LEED Platinum home for us. And I said, Nathan, we're going to commit an architectural sin. I said, we're going to do a prefab tasting room. And he said, oh, Mike and Mary Ann.
So he takes a paper napkin off the table, and he starts to sketch, and he says, we could do something like this, and it wouldn't cost that much, and it'd be, so earth-friendly, so green, and...
Well, he said, okay, go back and make a conceptual design for us. So he comes up one day, and he starts pulling out pictures of Ireland. And he's got the pictures of these stone-stacked buildings with green roofs. And then he says, you don't need a tasting room, you need a tasting space. And then he lays out this design of the labyrinth with the tasting gardens, a curved concrete building with a green roof. And then, he had us hooked and started bringing us in. So then we built the tasting room, and became quite popular really quick. I mean,
that was 2013.
Yeah. Well, we opened the tasting room in 2016. So I think we were building it in
you're right,
15.
You're right. I'm sorry, 13 was the house. Yeah. You're right.
And had a lot of people, a lot of traffic. There weren't as many tasting rooms at the time, and tourism was a little bit more robust at the time. And so we said, well, we're going to expand the building. So what we're in right now is an event space, and right behind us is a kitchen. And I said, well, okay, we can expand it, but we're not going to cut through these concrete walls, and we're not going to put on a kitchen. And I put my foot down, and so you can see that we did cut through the concrete walls, and there's the kitchen back there. And as typically happens, Mary Ann was right, because when you opened, we should start with Brandy Gray.
Oh, truly.
Who is our tasting room manager.
And she's been with us 10 years. Her 10th anniversary is coming up.
Second employee. We had hired
Kate first.
Kate first, and then hired Brandy. And the story I love telling about Brandy is we had interviewed a number of people as tasting room managers, and we'd ask them all. We'd say, well, why do you want to be a tasting room manager? And Brandy's answer was, well, because the world comes to you. And we thought, oh man, what a great answer, And we found that in our experience in hospitality is the most enjoyable part is all the people that come up here from around the country, around the world, different disciplines, different expertise. We had the top bishops of the Methodist Church up here one time, top educators and people you learn from.
And the connections that happen. You have people, it's people from our hometowns or people from where I went to college, or sometimes when people will run into each other up here, like, oh, hey, I haven't seen you since 10 years ago. And that's crazy that you met on the top of this hill in the middle of nowhere, Yamhill County, Oregon. So it is kind of crazy, the people that come up here.
But Mary Ann's vision for expanding the room, she hired a chef, Rebecca Clark, and Rebecca did the tasting room a couple days a week, but then we were doing lunches. We would do 2 or 3 wine paired dinners, a month at that time, and had a real robust
food program.
Culinary program too. Yeah. And then 2020 hit, and tourism backed off, and Rebecca wanted to start her own private catering business because that's where the traffic was. People didn't want to have big dinners. They wanted to have small dinners in their homes. And so the culinary program, we don't do as much. We have a lot of great chefs that come up. Paul, what's Paul's last name?
Stanislaw.
Pardon?
Paul Stanislaw.
Yeah, is a great chef that will do dinners up here for us, and a lot of other people. So we've more gone back, as many people did during COVID, to an appointment-only business, where generally it's people that make appointments that come up.
We did that for a while, but we've been welcoming walk-ins for a couple of years now, and we find that these days probably more than half of the people who come into the tasting room are people who are coming day of. But we try to balance having reservations and also leaving space so that we can welcome people.
Now, if you're in the tasting room, we don't have any behind us, you would normally see some fresh flowers. Oh. Mary Ann is a gardener. What do you do down here every morning?
A little this, a little that. Weed, cut flowers, yeah. It's true enjoyment for me. I really enjoy it.
Mary Ann put a big, huge dahlia garden in this year, and there's all kinds of dahlias around. But Mary Ann got her master gardener last year, and but ever since I've known her, ever since we've been married 50 years, first thing in the morning you're out gardening, you know, and that's one of the great things that happens here too, both at the house and around the tasting room is, you know, the
Flowers.
the beautiful gardens we have. But there was a time, and I don't remember the exact timing, it's been about 10 years ago now, that Eugenia Keegan and Anthony King recruited me to come over to the Willamette Valley Wineries Association. So I joined the Willamette Valley Wineries Association board, and it was going through a major transition at the time. We had just got the auction going. There was a lot of revenue coming in, and Eugenia wanted somebody with kind of the organizational and management background I had from corporate America, and Anthony. So I got involved with the Willamette Valley Wineries Association, and that's when I sat down with Mary Ann and said, I just can't do the bookkeeping and the QuickBooks and help you with the compliance and all that. Mary Ann's a compliance guru. Anybody that knows this business, if you're going to sell wine direct to consumer, you have to become somewhat of an expert in compliance.
Yes, you do.
So I said, how are we going to handle all this if I'm going to get active with the Willamette Valley Wineries Association? And that's when we sat down with Meara and said, Meara, how would you like to come in and be the director of finance and administration? And what year was that?
It was 2021, yeah. Before that, I had been, so Mary Ann and I are also beekeepers. We have too many hobbies. But a couple years before that, you had asked me to come and help you with the beekeeping.
And can I tell them why?
Yeah.
Because when your upper bee boxes get filled with honey, they are 40 and 50 pounds, and it's just so heavy, and they're high. I didn't have the leverage, you know, to get them down, so I brought in youth and strength, and she helped me out.
That's very kind, but mostly I just wanted honey. So and I thought it was fun. And so I started coming out more often, I guess in 2019 probably, to start helping with the bees. So I'd come out a few weekends.
Oh, and we were keeping bees in 2020. We would wear a mask.
Yes,
underneath our suit.
You're right.
Yeah.
So I was spending more time out here to help with the bees, basically, as kind of a hobby and side project that we had going on. And then one of the times that I was up helping with the bees in 2021, they sat me down and said, you know, we could use some help with some things. How do you feel about doing all the things we don't really want to do anymore? Is kind of how it felt. But also, you know, to free them up for other things. And also, you know, everybody deserves to step away at some point from some of the work that needs to be done. So how do you say no, right? You're in this setting. I came out and started working that summer, 2021. Yeah, June of 2021. So I've been here a little over 4 years now. And I started doing bookkeeping, compliance, a lot of the operational tasks that need to be done, and then it grew from there.
Well, and you've really taken us, helped us down the sustainability path.
You want to talk about sustainability?
Yeah, please.
Well, so, I mean, this place is really special, right? The actual place itself is really important. And one of the big reasons that I started working here is because I saw that this was such a special place. And it's one of the first things I hear from guests when they come to visit us is, this is an amazing place. How did you get here? This is such a special place. And I'm always appreciative every day that this is my office. And this is, you know, no matter how stressful things get, you get to be in this place. And it's clearly an amazing place. And so a big part of being here to me is making sure that this place stays special and is protected and that we're stewards of this land, just like the people who came before us, and that we're really taking good care of it. So definitely in our farming practices, we're live certified. We definitely want to make sure that we act as sustainably as we can and as responsibly as we can. This was forest before we came. When my parents bought the land, it had just recently been logged. So there were large sections of this property that were just all stumps that we pulled out. But we left large stands standing, so we still have a lot of the original forest, and we've planted more than 20,000 trees since 2005. So a lot of trees have been come in. More than 1,000 of those are Oregon white oak. We're part of the Oregon Oak Accord, which is a great initiative to try to bring back some white oak trees in this area, and vineyards hold a lot of responsibility for that because we're some of the last land that has oak trees, so don't cut them down, basically. Yeah, so sustainability is a lot of what we do here. And then Ravino, we're very excited about partnering with Ravino. Our first vintage that will be in Ravino bottles is our 2023 vintage, which we are just now releasing this fall. So we'll have some Ravino bottles coming out in the fall, which we're excited about. And then many more just got bottled with the 2024 vintage, just got bottled into Ravino, which was exciting. What else? What am I forgetting with?
Well, we're a certified family forest. The property is about 200 acres, and about 100 acres of it is a certified family forest. So that means you have to put together a forest plan. When you're live certified, you have to treat the whole 200 acres within live standards. You know, if you were organic or biodynamic, you can set aside whatever, 5, 10 acres and farm that organic or biodynamic, and then they don't really care what you do with the rest of your land. Whereas with live, you have to use their standards for your whole 200 acres. So within the forest itself, when we're planting new trees or whatever, we can't circle spray with certain herbicides and those types of things. And so it's a little bit more of a challenge to grow a forest. But you know, and you're bee friendly, I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, so we're part of the Oregon Pollinator Partnership, and we work really closely with OSU and Professor Andoni Melatopoulos. Did I say that right?
You did say it right.
Andoni Melatopoulos?
Yes, Professor Andoni Melatopoulos.
And what do you call his profession?
He is a
Well,
metliologist.
yes, master.
Master metliologist. I'm sorry if I'm saying all of these things wrong, Andoni.
Apologies, Andoni.
But he basically, he's an expert on wild bees and native bees. And he's been very amazing. We got connected to their pollinator kind of tour that they do every summer, where they go to different vineyards and they bring a bee expert to come out and talk about bees. But then we were also part of the bee survey that they've been doing, where they bring volunteers out and they survey what bees we have on the property, and then they give us advice on what plants we should plant to attract other bees. So definitely very active in that. And through that, we've also developed kind of an amateur vineyard beekeeping association, where there's this group of beekeepers on vineyards, and we get together about once a quarter, and usually Andoni comes and kind of mentors us, and we talk about whatever the beekeeping hot topics are for that season. And that's really fun because we have people from Abbey Road and Sokol Blosser and
Oh my gosh, Brooks.
Winery. So many different people come and join, and we all just nerd out about bees together, and it's very fun.
It's a lot of fun.
We actually have a research project we just started for Andoni, where we're taking 8 rows and 4 of them where he wants to identify how to grow more wildflowers, because he wants the headlands of vineyards to be wildflowers for the bees. And so we're trying different excavation techniques in 4 rows, disc and till, 3-in-1, and just injection seed. And then we're going to do it with some native seeds and with some exotic seeds. And we're going to see which technique is the best for creating wildflowers in vineyard headlands. You know, so that's been a sustainability initiative. We put up a dozen kestrel boxes. Now we have a whole flock of kestrels on the property. Bluebird boxes. We've now got a whole set of bluebirds, you know, that are up here on a regular basis. You know, so there's just a lot that we're doing to hopefully take care of the land, not as well as the Tuolumne Band of Kalapuya did, but we're doing our best, you know, to maintain it. But you know, we talked about our brand having a pillar of sustainability.
Yes.
You know, I'm sorry, a pillar of heritage, and we just talked about the second pillar, which is sustainability. And we want to be sustainable environmentally, but we also talk about wanting to be sustainable emotionally. And as a result, we really don't distribute around the country. Marianne and I have done a little bit of that. We tried going down to Texas and a few places to distribute. And that's a tough business. You have to be out there traveling. Wine sales is a direct sale business. And so you have to be with people a couple times a year for them to keep selling your wine. And as a result, we really haven't been in distribution. Everything we do is primarily direct to consumer, which is why the compliance is so important. But the third pillar is smile. And we want people to smile when they're on this site. We want them to smile when we taste our wines. And that's what our specialty is hospitality. And so when Meara got her arms around the finance administration, we said, you have such a nice smile. Why don't you become the general manager and take over all the hospitality too? And so Meara is now the general manager of the business.
I spend a lot of the time in the tasting room, but Brandy is our hospitality manager and runs the tasting room amazingly and does all our events for us. So.
Well, and Jess, wine club manager.
Yes. Our wine club manager is amazing also.
It's so much of a direct-to-consumer business is your wine club, getting it signed up and retaining them.
Oh, well, and the other thing we do that is borderline crazy is we do our own packaging and shipping. So we have an area on the vineyard that's has a metal building that we insulated and put a chiller on, and we bring up wine from
deep storage.
Deep storage, good word, deep storage to mid storage, so then we can bring it up here. But we also work there to package everything twice a year for our club and ship it out. And FedEx comes right in, backs up the truck, and we load it on. So, yeah.
That sounds like a party.
Yeah, it is a party.
It's a party. You want to help? It's coming up.
Yeah, it's coming up. You want to help?
Pack some boxes.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we only produce about 2,000 cases of wine each year, so we are pretty small, and that is kind of like what we can sell here in the tasting room into our wine club. So we purposely keep it pretty manageable and small so that we can kind of just sell directly to consumers, and our distribution is pretty limited. So.
Well, then a key part of our brand is all of our wines are grown with estate fruit. And so we have a very diverse estate, a number of different ridges, a number of different draws. Some of the vines are just pure south-facing. Some of them are on a east-facing, southeast-facing hill. And so Mary Ann early on started to architect different wines with Robert. And you might talk about the matriarchs.
Oh, our matriarchs, they're just lovely wines. They really are. We make what we call the estate wine, and that encompasses the whole vineyard, a little bit from each and every block, and it's a beautiful wine. But Robert came up with the idea actually to focus on different portions of the vineyard and try to zone in on the specific characteristics and flavors. So on the east side, we do the, oh my gosh, Mary, help me.
So the Sullivan comes from the 777.
Yeah, on the east. And that's just beautiful early morning light. On the south side and southeast facing, we do the
Kenny from the 114, Dijon 114.
You should do this.
And then on the west side, we have the Dardis that's mostly 115, Dijon 115. They're all blended with slightly, but they are mostly from those blocks. And they are all named after important women in our family. So all of those names, so Sullivan is my dad's grandmother, Winifred Sullivan. Kenny is my grandmother, my dad's mom, Claire Kenny McNally. And then we have Dardis is my mom's grandmother, my great-grandmother, Hannah Dardis. And then we also have a matriarch Chardonnay that's named after Lucy McCarthy. So that's McCarthy Chardonnay, and Lucy was Mary Ann's mom, my other grandmother. So we've got 2 of my grandmas and 2 of my great-grandmas that have wines named after them. So, and I think it's really cool that Mary Ann worked really closely with Robert to really design those wines. And they're all kind of designed around her palate. So they're all wines that Mary Ann really likes, is what we're doing here.
True. And they're not a single clone or a single selection. They're usually a blend of at least 2.
Yes, because we want to have the whole palate experience.
Yeah, we really like front to back palate. That's
And Robert's an amazing winemaker. He does such a great job of really making extremely unique wines from this one property. So all of our wines are estate grown. They're all from here, but we still make this breadth of Pinots that have really unique characteristics just because of the different exposures and the different clones that are used, and it's pretty amazing.
Now, I agree that Robert, is key, but you got to talk about Emily and Ray.
True.
Oh, that's true. His team's pretty amazing too.
His team is amazing. Yeah.
Emily Terrell's been making wine for a lot of years. She started with ERAF years ago and worked in New Zealand and other places. And, I'm sure Robert would kick me, but Emily is a key part of making these wonderful wines. And the architect is Marianne. I mean, we'll go to do the blendings. And like the Sullivan is a east-facing 777. It's a lighter Pinot, front palate. And Marianne and Robert will say, well, but we need something in the mid and back palate. And so then they'll start talking about, let's add a little Wadensville, let's add a little bit of Pomard. And Mara and I are tasting, adding 2%. No, we need 3%. And we're saying, okay, it tastes pretty good to me. And Marianne's saying, no, the 3%'s too much. Go back to 2% of that Wadensville. And that's the kind of detail they go into. And then Emily and Robert, every year in the blendings, will then try to have us taste different barrels because we're going to be ordering barrels for the next year. And there's a certain barrel you want for the Sullivan and a certain barrel you want for the Dardis. And so then they'll start tasting wines that were with the 115, which is the backbone of the Dardis, or the 777, the backbone of the Sullivan. And we'll taste 2 or 3 different barrels that those blocks were aged in, and Marianne can tell the difference.
Well, I'm not very confident with barrels, so we let Robert and Emily lead on that, very much. But we also have to talk about our 20th anniversary release wine, which is going to be our first sparkling, our Blanc de Blanc. And we're so excited we're going to be able to release that at our sparkling wine dinner September 13th. So it's all estate-grown fruit. We are just super pleased with it. It's just beautiful wine.
Yeah, it's 100% Chardonnay, so it's a Blanc de Blanc. It was a 2022 vintage, so it was in Tirage for 2 years, from May of 23 to May of 25. And we just disgorged it this May, which is very exciting, and it's our first sparkling, and we can't wait. Marianne's a real sparkling fan, so when we figured out that we could make our own, it was just a matter of time.
But I tell you, it's a task to do all of the packaging that goes with a bottle of wine. We hadn't done that in a while, and so to do it with the sparkling was a lot of fun, but also stressful as all get out. I mean, there's so many components to it, but we got it down and we did it, and it's done. It's
great.
So.
Congratulations, and on the 20th anniversary as well.
Yeah, 20th anniversary.
So I want to back up for a little bit. You talked a lot about more current things. I want to talk about this space. You mentioned coming out, looking at a lot of spaces, looking at this place first. What made you think this was the place you wanted to be, and what were the next steps? What were the first things you had to do once you owned the property?
Well, this was honestly the first place we looked at, and Mike McLean was our real estate agent. And we came out, and it's the stumps when they clear are still like 6 feet tall, so it's really hard to see around. And there was blackberry and poison oak everywhere. And it was raining, and we just really didn't have a good idea of the place. And we kept working our way down the valley, looking at already established vineyards with homes, and
went all the way to Eugene.
Yeah, went all the way down to Eugene, and then went back to Texas. And I'm sure Mike was disappointed in us. Mike McLean was, and he called us about a month later.
There had actually been an offer on this property.
Yes. Oh, that's right. He told us. I shouldn't be showing you this, but I'm going to.
But I think he had an idea that the offer was falling through. But he left us with the soil, with Andy Gallagher, who is also, we have to give a shout out to Andy. Andy's been a great friend. I spend a lot of time mapping, vineyards and mapping geology of the Willamette Valley. Ray Wells and Scott Burns, David Adelsheim and Ken Wright and I have all worked together on developing a lot of these maps. But Andy Gallagher had done a soil, profile and analysis of the property. And as I started to look into soils and study soils, I mean, the site had a wonderful soil profile. And so we said we should go back and look at it. Mike McLean called up and said that sale fell through. Why don't you guys come out and look at this again? So we flew back out. We looked at it again, put an offer in, and we actually bought a 90, on the east side, and then within 6 months bought another 80 on the west side, and then subsequently bought a couple of adjacent properties for a number of reasons that we don't need to get into. But then it was the job of working with Matt Peel to get all the stumps pulled, to get the whole place terraformed, and Bob Bailey, and get the things laid out. That road didn't come up the hill. So we had to design and build a road, put a water supply system in, get underground power up here. It was kind of projects I loved, There was a time, like I said, where I was developing pipelines and power plants in South America where there was no pipelines or power plants. And so it's just a greenfield site that you're developing a project on, and so then we started to, build the infrastructure and
we planted the entire east side in one fell swoop. And that's a lot of work and very expensive. And when we purchased the west side, we took a much slower approach to that and went block by block and filled in with the selections or clones that we identified or had help from others identifying that we really needed for our wines. So we have, now this will be the test, 667, 777, 114, 115, Pomard, Vaidensville,
And then all the Chardonnays.
and then all the Chardonnay, 76, 95, 96, and 548.
Yep. You did it. Good job. Yeah.
And there's, basically 45 acres of vines, on a 200-acre property, 100 acres of forest. And then there's, that being a CFO in the background, I built all the economic models for this, right? And so, when we bought the property and got it laid out, and said, well, you can put 90 acres of vineyard on here. And then, so when we started laying it out and planting it, I said, well, we're only going to get about 45 or 50 acres of vineyards. What? They said, well, oh, you're talking vine acres versus vineyard acres. Well, you have to have headland to turn around. Sure. And when you have steep hills and draws, you need more headland for the tractors to turn around. So I had to go to my financial models and rip them up and say, okay, this isn't going to be a 90-acre vineyard. This is going to be more like a 45 or 50-acre vineyard.
Which is a lot.
Which is already, a lot of vineyard.
A lot to work with.
But the thing that a lot of people ask us, and when people are in the tasting room, they always say, how's it going up here? Are you happy with your financial investments and that? We quickly change that subject and talk about the fact of there's nothing we'd rather have done over the last 20 years. We think of this as our encore career, because, and a big part of that is the friends we've made. I remember Meara asking us one time, well, how come your friends are my friends' parents? Well, we made all our friends through the schools. But then once the kids moved out, we were thinking, okay, how are we going to make friends? And then once we came up here, the collaboration of the industry, we immediately, at the time we came up here, 2005, the nested AVAs were just established. So Yamhill Carlton, Chehalem, Ribbon Ridge, Dundee Hills, Eola Amity. And so we joined the Yamhill Carlton Wine Growers Association. Ken was chairing at the time, Brian O'Donnell and Adam Campbell and John Hershey and, the whole group. I'm sorry if I'm missing people. And just the collaboration and the support they gave us. and we knew we wanted to learn how to sort grapes. So Brian O'Donnell and Jill invited us over to Belpont, and that was, I don't know.
Probably October.
Oh, it was cold.
It was cold.
And so we learned how to sort grapes with the O'Donnells, and then, and just the collaboration that we had in talking to people as we were planting about 5 acres at a time, about what clones, what rootstocks, how do you learn about this stuff. Adam Campbell was a great coach and champion for us, through the process. And then when we got involved with the Willamette Valley Wineries Association, it just expanded that network of people. And just the collaboration and the friendships we've made over the years, makes the returns on this business enormous.
All right. So you mentioned that obviously the original intent was to grow grapes and sell grapes, and the winemaking came later. So before we talk about the winemaking a little bit with you, a bit more, let's talk about the early grape growing days and making relationships and selling grapes. How did you find your partners in this?
Well, you met Mosaico at OWS.
Yeah, standing in line to get a lunch. Yeah, that's how we did it.
Well, we knew we needed a website, to feature the property. And so that's where Kate Spielman, Marianne's sister, came in and helped us develop the website. And then a lot of the network came through the associations, through the Yamhill Carlton Wine Growers Association, and I've always been somewhat of a marketing sales person, and so I'm not afraid to call somebody up and go over and talk to them and, start, discussing growing grapes. Marianne doesn't like it when I talk about economic models, but I also, early on when I built the financial models, the people that, the people that were supporting our development said, well, you'll be able to sell that fruit for $3,000 a ton. And then when we were out trying to sell the fruit, people were offering $2,500 a ton. I said, well, what's the deal? And they said, well, your vines, you're just on the 3rd, 4th leaf. You're not going to get top, fruit until those vines get to be 8 or 10 years old. And that's what we found, is that, there is 2 different markets, for fruit. There's the vineyard designate market, the people that want to make sure that you crop things down closer to 3 tons an acre, and that you're using precision farming, on that you're pulling leaves on the east side, that you're in-row cultivating to make sure there's not competition, with the fruit up in the fruit zone. So when you're developing wine for the luxury wine markets, there's different farming techniques and different age of the vines, that are required for that. With a 45-acre vineyard, though, generally when people want to buy a vineyard designate set of wine, they're looking for maybe 10 tons, produce maybe 600 cases. Some people only want 5 tons, maybe produce 300 cases. Well, we produce 150 tons a year, and so we found that we were looking for some buyers that would buy, 25, 30, 40 tons at a time. Well, that ends up being a different market, and that market will allow us to have higher yields. Because our vines are densely planted. We have a 1 by 1.8 vineyard, which is 2,250 vines per acre. The typical vineyard up here has about 1,500 vines per acre. So we have 1/3 more vines per acre than the typical vineyard. Well, the good news about that is you can carry a heavier crop load. So there's portions of the vineyard that we focus more for yield, pushing 4 to 4.5 tons an acre. And that's for the premium wine markets. And there's portions of the vineyard that we focus on, high precision farming, for the luxury wine markets. And there is that 2 different markets. And There's, different farming techniques you focus on in that. There's different yields that you're pushing for. But a lot of it, to answer your question, was deciding what clones to plant, what rootstocks to plant, and that was all in talking to people, and getting different coaching from different folks.
What did you expect owning a vineyard would be like, and what were the biggest surprises for you in the first few years?
Isn't it romantic? That's what not everybody, but we get a lot of that here in the tasting room, Oh, this just must be so romantic, so fun, it's a lot. And then Mike is deeply offended when people say, oh, you must be enjoying your retirement so much. It's a lot.
Not yet.
Not yet, no retirement yet. We're getting closer and closer though. So, yeah, did not have any, I did not have any appreciation for the amount of work that it was going to be. But it's work we enjoy and work we love, and I can't imagine doing anything else. It's kept us so on top of our game and young, and so many different aspects to it that you have to learn. It's a wonderful industry.
Yeah, I wanted to be in the country. I wanted to get out of the cities. Now, again, we lived in Houston, Texas, and Dallas, Texas. And we were looking for a place with no concrete, that was quiet.
I think you found it.
And if I was still living in Dallas, Texas, I wouldn't know that tonight we're having a new moon. You just don't track that stuff. I wouldn't have become more familiar with the constellations.
And we know weather. We know every day's weather, and probably irritatingly so to others, but that's a farmer. And my grandparents were farmers, and I remember as a kid listening to them going, wow, is that all you guys talk about? Is the weather? But we do.
Yeah, and just getting a little philosophical with you, life is a set of cycles, and you have your ups and you have your downs, and people can talk about the general political climate that we're having right now, and then I'll just reflect that that's kind of a down right now. But being in nature, you realize that cycle continues to move. You move through the spring to the fall to the winter. You move through the crisp, beautiful mornings to the hot afternoons to the beautiful sunsets in the evenings. And so to come out to the country and have a vineyard, and being close to nature, was huge, for me. I don't know, Meara, what do you think?
No, I agree that those are the draws. I think the things that maybe surprised you were that you'd spend so much time having to get permits to sell wine in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, yeah.
figuring out how to ship and work with FedEx and UPS.
Right.
Or how to...
Well, even when we added
all-
on and we put on the event space in the kitchen, the big surprise was, well, you have to add another septic tank. And you're like, what? We have to dig that up and put it,
Yeah.
So there's just
Yeah, the amount of
surprises
time
every day.
we spend on our water system
On
is
our water system.
very, know so much about
Thank you for taking that.
water.
We are a public water system.
Yes,
We're
we
a
are,
public water
because we
system
service
now.
the public.
The Oregon Department of Health wants our water tested on a regular basis. And
And then you have to, there's a lot of, so those are the things that, it's running a small business, and it's running an agricultural business, and it's running a retail business, and, there's a lot of aspects, and you're never bored. And, every day is different, literally on the calendar. It's like, okay, one day I'm in the tasting room, the next day I'm going to be in the office, the next day I'm going to be down at the winery, the next day I'm going to be approving labels downtown Portland.
But wait a minute, we're out of toilet paper.
Yes, exactly. And then it's okay, but here are the things, the crises that are here right now, or we just got this email or notice that we have to deal with this thing right away. So it's amazing that, the vineyard is so complicated and the winemaking is so complicated, but then also just running a business in the middle of nowhere is very complicated.
7 days a week. Yeah.
There's always things surprising me every day.
But, it's just fascinating, the diversity of this business. Agriculture just it's itself, to understand the vines, to understand the geology that creates the soils, to understand how to make compost, instead of putting industrial, fertilizers on the property. And then you move into the winery, and the mechanics of just getting the fruit sorted and how to deal with the sorting table when it breaks down, or the forklift when it breaks down, but then the biochemistry of the winemaking, and when do you want to have extended maceration, when do you want to get the juice off the grapes right away, and the whole techniques of winemaking, not to mention the barrel choice and the blending choices and that type of stuff. And then when you get into the marketing, the social media, the hospitality, the compliance, and the merchandise marketing, I wish I had some kind of appreciation for, but I don't know anything about getting shelf space, and if you want to have a significant wine business in distribution, you need to understand that game. You need to be higher scale. You need to be at 100,000 cases, or at least 50,000 cases, so you can afford to have salespeople out, in the field, so you can afford to be negotiating with the grocers for shelf space. But what other business can you have that kind of diversity, from agriculture to merchandising?
Yeah, you don't get bored.
Let's talk about hospitality a little bit. Obviously, something that's important to you. Tell me about what do you like to offer here? What is sort of the hospitality model at Fairsing?
So we are 100% direct-to-consumer, mostly, I'd say 99% direct-to-consumer. So we really want people to come up and enjoy this space and enjoy wine here. We are currently open 7 days a week, so we have our tasting room here ready for people. We do take reservations online, but we also welcome people who walk in. We do events multiple times a year for our wine club. We have wine club pickup parties twice a year for the 2 allocations that we do, spring and fall. We have casual dinners. We have more fancy seated dinners, kind of depending on what the year feels like and what we have to celebrate. We do a Ceilidh dance now,
talk about the
which is
Ceilidh.
very exciting.
Meara's an Irish
I'm also an
dancer.
Irish dancer. Speaking of too many hobbies, I'm also an Irish dancer. One of the things that I wanted to do when I came here was start doing Irish dance events. So for 3 years in a row now, we've had a live Irish band and a caller. So it's like a social dance. It's like Irish square dancing, kind of. So you have a teacher come and kind of teach people some basics, and then you jump in and you dance together, which is really fun with the live band. So we've done that 3 times now, which is a great party.
Fairsing Fridays, my very favorite
Yeah,
thing that we do. We do it every month during the summer. We just had our last one last Friday. And we invite people to come up and bring their own food, whatever you want. And we're outdoors on the Adirondack chairs. And we're open until 8. It's just 5 to 8. It's very relaxed. We don't do our typical tasting. We do bottle service. And it's just a beautiful evening. Mike and I love to go around, see what everybody's eating, and also chit-chat with them. And, it's just very relaxed.
Yeah, so we're definitely, these 2, one of the reasons they'll never retire is because they're down here almost every day. And when they do, they touch every table and they talk to people, and people will often ask me, oh, are your parents around? I met your parents the last time I was down here. They're so nice. So we definitely want to welcome people here. And one of the things we're really excited about having this amazing space is that we do get to share it with people. So.
Well, and our community has expanded beyond just wine industry to our wine club. We just had Russ and Carol up here. We've been wine club members forever, and talking about, their path and the things they've doing. Now, Russ is just retired from adjunct professor, from an instructor from Linfield, to keeping in touch with different people's lives. One of our wine club members was an astronomer. His dad was an assistant to Hubble, and he brought his telescopes up and found some different galaxies, just the diversity of people we meet in the hospitality business.
Yeah, and real friendships, for sure.
Why the name Fairsing?
Oh, Fairsing. We were all together in Boston for a summer vacation. Our son was at school there.
Wow,
He had this very lovely girlfriend.
Who's now his wife.
Who's now his wife. And we were all... Stephanie. And we were all sitting around and we were talking about the business, that we've got to name it now. We bought the property, we got to come up with a name. And we wanted something Irish. Well, Stephanie was an Irish histories major, literature major. And so we kind of assigned her the task, We want something that's easy to say, doesn't have an accent mark, that will have some meaning. And she brought us Fairsing, which Meara was just in Ireland 2 weeks ago.
It was, yeah, it was great.
And you have the correct pronunciation.
I think they would say Fairsing, but we
Fairsing.
say Fairsing.
We say
Yeah.
Fairsing, so.
And it means bountiful in the Irish language.
With a dual meaning of.
It can also be interpreted as like kind of a wide vista, like the phrase far and wide in Irish is Fairsing is fada. Fairsing is fada. So it's kind of both meanings, so.
It's one of the few properties where you can actually have a vista of both the Cascades and the Coast Range. And one of the things I love to do is to talk to our guests about the Cascades, and the Coast Range, the different geology, the fact that between the two, we have the Willamette Valley, and it starts with the south of Eugene with the Capula Mountains, which is the headlands of the Willamette River that flows north. And so it's generally people talk about that coming up to Fairsing for the view. Now, I would say it's for the wine. Now,
Both is good.
when it comes to hospitality and how do you start marketing hospitality, the way that began was Kate and Marianne said, what we need to do is get people referring people over here. Yeah. So they started making chocolate chip cookies and taking some of that 2012, which was our first release wine, to other tasting rooms, and I would say, quite frankly, most of our business comes from referrals, both from other tasting rooms, but also from guests that have been up here.
And wine club members bringing friends and yeah.
Yeah, and that's how you build the business. There's some people that pick up on the Willamette Valley Wineries Association Willamette Valley Wineries Association website or the Amil Carlton website or social media, but I think a lot of it is referrals, mouth to mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is very flattering and lovely.
Yes, quite the compliment.
Let's talk about the industry a little bit. I'm curious about your impressions of Oregon wine when you got here in 2005. What were your impressions of the people here and the wines they were making? And what are the biggest sort of points of evolution and growth that you've seen in the last 20 years?
I've always been impressed with the Oregon wines, and Pinot Noir is my personal favorite. So it was so impressive to see these small family-owned wineries and to be able to taste them back, in the late 90s and early 2000s. And we really enjoyed that. And I would say that this area has expanded so in outside acknowledgement of what we're doing. The French have come, California has come up here to purchase property, and it's world recognized now. These are gorgeous wines coming from a beautiful place with people who are so committed to making wonderful wine.
I think when we arrived 20 years ago, there was a second influx, that was just beginning. One of the first winemakers we met was David Lett,
Yes.
And Irie was just starting a wine club. Everybody was just starting wine clubs at that time. The nested AVAs had just been established. People were starting wine clubs. We were one of the first wine club members of the Irie,
Yeah.
wine club. And I remember David Lett not wanting to talk about wine, wanting to talk about strawberries.
As he held a flat of strawberries, he was in the tasting room showing everybody what he had just purchased.
And at that time, I would say it feels like there was, a third of the tasting rooms
Right.
that there are now. And at about that time, you started to see the second generations taking over. Alex Okelblosser and Adam Campbell and the Ponzi daughters, and we're starting to expand take the businesses over to the parents. More people started to come in and plant vineyards and build tasting rooms.
One thing I have thought about is that, there was such an influx of people and money and grapes being planted and in the early 2010 timeframe, but it felt like everyone that invested and came had their heart in it and did a good job. It didn't feel like it was, just a big box and you sold wine out of it. It's really been, I think people really enjoy what they do and love this area.
The Willamette Valley is still minuscule compared to the national, let alone the worldwide wine market. And there's, it's not a surprise that this year there's a bit of a recession in wine, and there's a little bit too much fruit on the market right now. But that's going to get sucked up like that, as soon as, the wine industry starts recovering a little bit. California loves to buy our fruit up here. Washington loves to buy our fruit up here. Canada is coming down here and buying fruit. And so you're seeing a change in the industry of, like Marianne said, larger businesses moving in, and buying businesses and expanding. California and Washington and Canadian wine businesses buying our fruit. But I still also see more and more people like ourselves coming in with in my mind, the perfect model is like a 15-acre vineyard, where you're making, somewhere around 1,000, 1,500 cases. You're offering the tasting room experience where the owners are there, pouring the wine. Now, that's a luxury wine business. That's the $75 a bottle, kind of direct-to-consumer business, which is wonderful. But at the same time, there are some wonderful wines being made, where people are producing 50 to 100,000, cases a year. Marianne would refer to those as her Tuesday night wines. Of course, lately, you don't drink Tuesday night wine. But you like the luxury wines all the time. But we've become spoiled, and I've never felt I've had a great palate. Marianne's got the palate of the family. But over time, I've also realized that, I like to say that there's three different, types of, palates. There's people like Marianne and winemakers. They're probably 20% of the people that really can distinguish, the flavors and the taste, maybe 30%, and then there's people that fake it, that pretend like they can distinguish and tell you your wine's corked when it's not, and don't really understand it. And then there's people like me that say, I like that one, but I don't like that one, and over the time of being here, I find the ones that I say I like tend to be more luxury than the ones that I say I'm not going to drink that, which tends to be Tuesday night wines, but they're still beautiful wines.
So what comes next? You're celebrating 20 years this year. What is in the future for yourselves and for the brand?
Yeah, we just keep doing what we're doing. Like we said, we want to stay sustainable, so we don't want to get giant. We want to keep having people come up and visit us. We'll weather the low points, but yeah.
And we'll relish the high points.
Exactly. Yeah.
Personally, more garden time.
Yeah. Hopefully they get a little more time away.
Yeah, and time away and some garden time.
Yeah, I worked for a number of large corporations that had commitments to grow earnings per share on a compounded basis. And I think compounded growth, is not sustainable. Emotionally, maybe it is economically. I don't know if corporations, I won't get into, the high price earnings multiples of the S&P 500 right now or any of that. But with this business, we don't want it to grow. we want it to be a 2,000 case business, where, we have a steady wine club members. Hopefully we're adding as many wine club members as we lose. I mean, typically, you're going to lose someplace around 20% of your wine club members a year. I think people have a larger attrition than that, but fortunately we're able to hold on to ours and just maintain the business. I think one of the aspects of it is as more tasting rooms come in and as tourism goes through a slump, you have to figure out unique ways to build your market. And a lot of that is social media, a lot of that is, spending more time with the various concierges and the other tasting rooms. But the other thing you have to focus on is the cost structure. You have to be thinking about how you manage your sales, general administration costs, how you manage your farming costs, but I like the way Meara and Marianne said, we're just going to keep on keeping on and, enjoying the great times and tolerating the tough times.
Well, and Mike's been spending a lot more time with the foundation. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, when I was at the Willamette Valley Wineries Association, I was just ending up my second 3-year term, and Morgan McLaughlin and I and the board said we wanted to do more in the philanthropic aspect for our vineyard stewards. Salud had been doing wonderful things for over 25 years. We wanted to maintain and expand that, but we felt that we needed more support for our vineyard stewards, in particular affordable housing, early childhood education and care, personal advancement opportunities. So the WVWA committed to creating a 501c3 nonprofit. It's called the Willamette Valley Wine Foundation. We kicked it off in 2019. We got our IRS, 2020 slowed everything down. We got our IRS exemption in 2022. We have a board of 16 wonderful, diverse people, some of the wine industry, some of people that have lived experience, with the mission that we're trying to serve. We've been able to create affordable housing spaces. We got a commitment of 16 apartments in the new Stratus project in McMinnville for our agricultural workers by helping them get $6 million of agricultural workforce housing tax credits. We've got our 4th cohort of students moving through Clackamas Community College's early childhood education program. A cohort's about 15 Latinas. This program is offered completely in Spanish, and they're working on associate degrees in early childhood education. We've been helping develop family child care homes. A lot of our vineyard stewards don't want to drop their kids off at a 50 to 100 kid daycare center. And so there's a certified family child care home where you can have around 10 children. And we've been helping our Latina leaders, educators, get licensed to open up family child care homes. We got some concepts for developing community health workers. Community health workers are like an associate degree in social work. They help people get the Oregon Health Plan, Medicaid. It's a little bit of a morass of trying to get qualified, and it's going to be tougher with this big, beautiful bill that just passed of people getting qualified to get Medicaid. Well, community health workers help them do that. When Salud has a van out doing assessments in the vineyards, they typically have a community health worker there helping people navigate how to get payment through the Oregon Health Plan and Medicaid. Well, we want to get more community health workers developed and get them placed in affordable housing communities. Our ideal vision is to create a community where people can build home equity, where there can be a child care center there and there can be a community health worker there. And that's what we're working on with the Willamette Valley Wine Foundation, and that's where I spend all of my time.
A lot of time, yeah.
All of his time.
Which is a great place to spend it.
Yeah. And so, and I think that's a big future for the industry.
That's really wonderful. That's really wonderful. That's all the questions that I have for the three of you. Is there anything I didn't ask today that I should have? Anything we didn't talk about that you were hoping to talk about?
I feel like we covered a lot, yeah. I think we're good.
Well, I want to thank Marianne for bringing me out here.
Oh, gosh. Thanks for coming with me.
But,
Finally got to go to Oregon.
yeah.
After all these
Finally got to
years.
go, right.
You know, I was thinking that I needed to go into another job that still had corporate airplanes and where people still called me sir. And she said, come on, Mike, we need to
Let's go
go and do something different. And it took a while to, you know,
You jumped right in.
settle back, you know, but I never would have done it without her inspiration. And her leadership is what, you know, it's her business, you know, and
We all share. We all share. Thank you, Rich, for this. This has been very enjoyable.
Good,
Really
thank you.
enjoyed it.
Thank you,
Yeah.
the three of you, for taking the time to share
Oh,
with
yeah.
us today.
Great.
And congratulations on 20 years.
Thank
Thank
so
you,
much.
yeah.
Yeah.
Watch
We're
out
ready
for
to
that.
party.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.